All right, so welcome to the Naval Aviation Podcast number 3, and our very special guest today is my former commanding officer at VP 45, now retired Navy Captain Rich Fite. And a couple weeks ago, Hugh asked me, could we have a P3 guy on? And I was like, well, yeah, my guy would be Skipper Fite. And
that's right.
So Skipper Fite was an NFO in the Navy, detailer, requirements officer, resource officer.
Yeah, requirements, P3, P8 requirements.
P3, P8 requirements officer, officer recruiter of the year, 1999. I want to hear more about that when we get to that point in the story.
That's a good story, Brian.
Yeah, no, I bet, and I've never heard it. So our audience is primarily, well, I mean, they're very interested in the airplane, of course, and flying it, but also, more importantly, like your path to the airplane, and then it'll just happen naturally. Some of the stories, and so with that teed up, Hugh.
So Skipper Fite, welcome to the podcast. I always like to open with the idea of aviation as a career, but also as kind of a vocation. And I was like, the first question is always, how did you get to the point where you were sitting in a naval aircraft, flying through the air? Like what prompted you to get there, and what path did you take? Because there's a lot of different ones. We have OCS, NROTC, Naval Academy, etc.
Yeah, well, first, let me say thanks to you and Brian. Brian's always been a favorite JO of mine, so I appreciate you actually twisting my arm to do this, but I really am grateful. So thanks for having me, guys. All right, my path to naval aviation is really kind of circuitous, so this might take a little bit. My dad was an Air Force kind of guy, so I was an Air Force brat. Moved around a ton, and he retired in Columbus, Ohio. He was the ROTC guy at the Ohio State University.
The Ohio State,
so
right.
We retired there in Columbus, Ohio. And I was always kind of a risk taker, kind of a wild guy. My oldest sister was in the Air Force, married to a F4 Wizzo, backseater. I was the middle child, so I guess always finding my way in trouble. So my dad put me in an all-boys school to try and help out, and so did that, and then went off to college, played Division III baseball. That was really the only thing I liked. I hated schoolwork, always have. And
that's all three of us, Brian. How about that?
Yeah, I was never, even though it stuck me in the school, but I did have two great mentors there. Of course, my baseball coach, who came all the way from Ohio to attend my retirement. That was just awesome. He taught me a lot about loyalty. And maybe a quick segue. I know this isn't about baseball. I'm a huge baseball guy, but
that's all right.
It's my freshman year, and my first chance to start in varsity was a doubleheader. And I see my name. I'm up in the dugout, and you know how it is. You just see the clipboard up there, right? No one tells you whether you're playing or not. And I look and I see my name at shortstop, and I'm like, oh, geez, And anyways, did okay in the field, but I went 0 for 4 at the plate. And I was like, I'm going to be sent back down to the freshman or JV team, and I'll never play a book of varsity ever again.
Right.
And sure enough, he started me in the second ball game, and did all right. And that taught me a lot about his faith in me, and he didn't quit on me, and that really meant everything. I had a huge impact on my life, like my old man. But so graduated from small D3 school, and decided to be a Marine aviator. And Brian probably doesn't know this.
No, I didn't.
So, I had the poster. I love the uniform. working out with the OSO officer, selection officer, getting ready to go to OCS at Quantico. Had the aviation. I listened to your guys' podcast. That was awesome, phenomenal. I thought you guys did a super shit hot job.
Thanks.
And went off to Quantico and got started and everything. And then come time for my commissioning flight physical, and I was 20/20. I mean, no kidding, 20/20 -2 in my left eye. Oh. And they're like, hey, we need infantry guys. And I'm like, hey, I got this piece of paper. Remind me of your story, Brian. I got this aviation contract here. And they were pretty pissed at me. And I'm like, I'm not interested. Ever since I was a little boy, 8, I built all the model airplanes. My dad flew every Century Series fighter aircraft and up to F-4 in Vietnam. And so I love aviation. And in fact, in Columbus, my next door neighbor was a vigilante pilot, Navy guy. I probably spent more time with him. My dad was off with a lot of work and other extracurricular activities, but that's a different story.
Well, just a small segue there, just to kind of interrupt. Yeah. I want to have a whole segment on the RF-5 vigilante, because to watch one of those monstrosities land on like an Essex class carrier is absolutely insane. And the story behind that aircraft alone is worth an entire podcast, I think. So, I mean, just crazy.
Yeah, I should get his name is Commander Ray Riley, and he flew in Vietnam as well. Like I said, a Vigi guy. And he's the guy who taught me to fly. My dad quit flying, wasn't interested in it at all after his career, and went into business. And but my next door neighbor, he flew. His last tour was at North American Rockwell. That's right there in Columbus. Then became Rockwell International, but he was the test pilot guy. They were flying the Buckeye, Vigi, and I forget the other aircraft that North American made there. And
right.
We'd go up right to Port Columbus Airport. He had a 172. He taught me to fly. We hung out together, drunk scotch together, and it was really his street stories that made me want to be in naval aviation. And I like the Marine uniforms, and that's how I got started.
Yeah.
And then it all fell apart, and I had nothing to do. I mean, literally, I really didn't have a skill set other than being a not so good shortstop. that doesn't pay the bill. So I came back home and I was moving furniture for a company. That's what I did.
Wow.
And then my dad helped me out to, I did have a business degree, if you want to call it that, from, like I said, a liberal arts school, and got me a job as an auditor. I did that for a year, and I hated every second of it, other than the people I went out and partied with.
Right.
Folks I worked with were great, but who wants to be auditing stuff? I didn't even know what I was doing, and hated it every day.
I still don't know what an auditor does.
You don't want to know it. It's not, it's like the office guy stuff. It was just terrible, but this taught me a lifelong lesson of you got to love what you do. And then out of the blue, my mom tells me that this Navy recruiter had called her and put me in touch with him. He's like, hey, do you want to go into the Navy? We need NFOs. And I'm like, yeah, I'll be down. And, I'd already taken all those, the same tests. So I'd already been through all that stuff and passed the test, and he says, hey, can you go this August? And it was like July. And I'm like, yeah. And,
good. Right away. That's awesome.
And I went to Aviation Officer Candidate School, and it was a little bit easier for me. The athletic stuff, dealing with drill instructors was no big deal. In fact, I actually enjoyed it. It was, a lot of guys were sweating stuff. In fact, actually, kind of a side story, which is really sad because I feel kind of terrible. My roommate was a Princeton guy, Ivy League guy, and he played varsity tennis at Princeton.
Right.
And he just wanted to leave. He was a mess. And I'm like, Barnesy, stay. Just, you can stand on your head for 14 weeks. Just take it one day at a time. I'll help you. I'll do your stuff for you.
Right.
And he graduated. He went to Hornets. And I was actually on duty. I was a flag aide for Strike Group Commander, and he was in our air wing. And, he just flew right in the train at night, and
wow,
it just crushed me.
How long ago was that? Like, about how long ago was that?
That was 1995, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. You know what, though? But up until that happened, he was thankful that you stuck with him, I bet. And he was probably liking what he was doing.
I think he loved every minute of it.
Right. That's awesome. So that's a cool route. And then the idea of going to OCS, now your class, when did you graduate? 81 ballpark in there? 81? 82?
So I graduated from college in 84. I worked, like I said, went off to Quantico, did that for a little bit, and then worked as this, auditor dude. And then I went just about on my birthday in August of 85, and I graduated with 4085, Friday, December the 13th.
There you go.
We graduated. Staff Sergeant Carney was our DI. So back then it was, I think they changed the name to OCS, but kept it at Picola. So this was Aviation Officer Candidate School. I know it's gone through different.
It was still that name. Yeah, absolutely. So Brian, you were go ahead.
Oh no, I was saying I was an 85 guy. I think like your group 86.
Okay. Yeah. So you're 2 ahead of me. All right. Yeah. Just out of curiosity, you know a guy named Rick Buckwalter, who is a VP pilot, big tall guy. He only did 8 years, but he's around your time. But
I don't. You. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Because I'm going to get him on the podcast next. He flies for American, and he flies 737s. Ended up in Poseidon's, right? P8s.
Yeah.
Right. So there you go.
I was just looking for it. Somewhere I have a collected what we call Fite-isms. Me, Matt Anderson, Dave Walston, Fite-isms, and my favorite, the top of that list is "If you can't be quiet, don't be new." I don't know if you remember saying that, Skipper, but
that's good.
That's an important piece of advice I need to remind myself of frequently. And then, but there was something, I'll get the wording kind of off, but like when you're not having fun anymore, you ought to hang up your spurs kind of thing. And here are elements of that. I didn't know the auditor story till just now, but is that kind of where you learn this truism, and then, that kind of became part of your mantra?
Oh, absolutely. I think all that, all those experiences, as a whole impacts you and the lens that you look at life through. And it really became my whole life. It's all been about the team or the people, it's never been about the platform. Would I be lying to you if I was, disappointed about not being a naval aviator, single anchor guy versus double? I was for a while. Then there was a shift, and I guess we can talk more about that later.
Yeah. So, now we're in OCS. Tell me about your experiences as a fleet JO. What squadrons were you in, and particularly what did you love most about the job? Yeah, well, let me backtrack just a little bit, Bry. So, after AOCS and graduation, then got married, went off to VT10 right there in Picola. Right. And did okay there. There was 20 guys in the class. I was number 10. My very best friend, who was at AOCS with me, he was a West Virginia boy. And when my dad was in Vietnam, he was from Morgantown, so was my mom. And we went back there to live with grandparents while he was gone that year. And when I meet Brian at AOCS, I realized he's from Morgantown, aero engineer from West Virginia. And we roomed together, and we realized that we were both in Sunnyside, which is the suburb of Morgantown, at the same time, which was strange. So the point is though that Brian Seifert had this huge impact
on me. I mean, I was one, fighters. I was going to be a REO. Like I said, my brother-in-law was a Wizzo, and my dad was a fighter pilot, and that was just in my blood of building models, all the way up to seeing every air show and whatnot.
Sure.
Come selection time, like everybody goes through, I was like, hey, F-14s, and Brian's like, what are you thinking of? You're getting married. He was getting married too, right after. Actually, we were both married. What am I thinking of? BT-10. We were just married, and he's like, hey, this P3 deal, man, it's a great hookup. And I'm like, what's the P3? I mean, I am not kidding. I'm like, what's the P3?
Yeah, exactly.
I literally didn't know what a P3 was. And he goes, it is the greatest deal. And he says, there are only going to be 2 guys that go. So, Rich, if you don't put it down, there's no chance. He goes, just go ahead and put it down. He was number 1 in his class everywhere he's been. Mm-hmm. Of course, he got it, and somehow I got it as the number 10 guy right in the middle of the pack.
That's great.
And we both went off to Mather together, and we both had skied a lot up at Tahoe, big skiers, and we both wanted to go to Moffett. He got Moffett, of course, being number 1 guy, and I got friends with Maine. That's what I did my JO tour, to get back to your where I spent my first tour.
Yeah,
which was prior to that. I want to mention though, because I was the skipper of 30. I was lucky to do that, but I hated BP-30 at the RAG. I was like, what am I doing here? Listening to stuff about acoustics. I'm like, this is so far removed from aviation. I mean, I literally I would sit there and doodle. I mean, I could pass all the tests because I'm a great memorizer. I'm not that smart, but I can memorize the shit out of stuff. Note cards.
Awesome.
I mean, that's really, you can get through naval aviation that way. And I thought, man, I have made the worst mistake in my life. Got up to Maine. I'm like, okay, I'll make the best of it, and I'm gonna get out. I'll do this. And still wasn't crazy about the mission, but I fell in love with the air crew and what we did.
Yeah.
A lot of the partying of being deployed and just my
per diem. The P3 per diem.
It's not a bad thing. Going to Rota, Spain, Bermuda, Iceland, and I mean literally going all over the world is what it was just awesome. Love the experience, and my PPC Naval Academy grad, just a great old boy from Southern Virginia, had nothing growing up. He was a PPC and I was his TACO, and we had the greatest JO crew, CAC 8, and it's those experiences that just made the tour super.
I was CAC 8 for you. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about just the role there in the back of the airplane as the mission commander versus the aircraft commander, and maybe just give us a good story about the best thing you got to do as a JO, like chasing a submarine or doing something, some cool experience that you might have run into, getting intercepted by a Russian, something like that.
Actually, I do have a story on that, but back in the tube, Brian, I'm sure talked to you about that. You've got a bunch of air crew guys, and once you open the main cabin door, what I love is everybody's equal. You got your ball caps on. It reminds me of again being in the dugout with your diff doing whatever. Everybody's working as a team to track submarines, and that was that was kind of fun because you're all working in concert with each other on top of back then. I'm a Cold War guy, right? We're flying out of Iceland, and hang on a sec.
All right.
I'm getting rid of this phone at some point here. So, geez.
Persistent.
Yeah.
They want you.
I don't know what they want, but okay. So we're up out of Iceland. It was a lot of fun, flying on boomers, Soviet, boomers, and
sure.
attack submarines, and it was an important mission. When you got back and debriefed, I mean, it was serious. They actually went through went through everything you did, replay. It was just like, I can imagine the NFL looking at film. And they were dead serious about keeping track of
hell yeah,
submarines, and turnover was really important. So as a JG, I got to be, had my own crew, which was, really appreciate the fact that my skipper had me. And like I said, Woody Clark was my PPC, and he flies for FedEx now. He'd finished out his career in the reserves, but so we got selected. Hugh, you know about our special project squadrons at all? I'm sure Brian does, but
I don't even know that much.
Well, there are P3s that are modified to do special projects type.
Oh, the EP guys.
Work.
Yeah, right.
Actually, it's not BQ. It's called BPU. You get into all of what they do, but they have very special admission sets.
Gotcha.
And they needed enough aircraft down with them to Bermuda to fly Soviet bears that were flying to Cuba, and we were flying form on them. Now, Woody Clark, my PPC, was form qualified. There's only a few guys in the squadron that were. He was one of them. And we got to fly form on the Soviet bears. And they've got those, counter-rotating props, huge aircraft. And they would go down low, and we would stay with them the whole time while we carried some special projects guys, and the other special projects P3 was keeping track of them and what they were doing and trying to basically collect intel. Shadowed them everywhere they went.
Mm-hmm.
That was great. And Bermuda's almost where my career ended on, I guess, two quick sea stories. That don't take a beer into McDonald's, I found out. I begged the cop military police guy to let me go, and he did. I could have unraveled it right there.
Sure.
And then we're out and just out in town having some beers, and my navigator and the 2P co-pilot, he was a buzz, guy that didn't make it through, and Mike Nees, great, great person. And then kind of weird, and they start, had a few beers, and they started arguing over whose dog could kill whose dog. And Jay, my navigator, took his drink and pushed it in Mike's face, and they start fighting. I get everybody. I'm like, everybody leave, and the restaurant manager's screaming, and I just threw a bunch of money at them, and we got out of there. But, anyways, those are my two sea stories.
Hold on, pause for 1 second there, guys. I've lost your video feed, and I'm going to pause the recording now.
Now, and Skipper Fite probably doesn't know this story, but talk about narrow misses.
Mm-hmm.
I think, sir, you were the XO at this time, and me and some guys went to do the KEF TAC-X. And my battle buddy was a guy named John Tash. We're still really close today. And they knew that we were going to, drink too much, and everybody was supposed to pair up and kind of take care of each other. And so we're at international night, and I look over. I hadn't been keeping tabs on Tash, and he's 3 sheets to win. I believe he was sitting in a cooler full of beer, just in it, just actually sitting in it. I don't know what he's doing. And then so I tried to go shot for shot with the Brits. They brought a bunch of good scotch, and I'm going shot for shot with these guys. And this one old lieutenant commander puked through his fingers like that, and it kind of shot a little stream. And my stomach got so weak once I saw that. I'm like, I'm going to hurl too. And so I hit the head, fell down, and then puked all over the bathroom. And some well-meaning individual sends me to medical. And I was sure my short-lived naval aviation career is at this point. I got a good doctor, and he said, well, it looks like food poisoning. This man has food poisoning. But part of the story you don't know is there was actually a letter generated about this. And Bryce Lund hid that letter until it expired. He was then the admin. And once it expired, he handed it to me and he said, when you have the opportunity to do this for somebody that works for you, make sure you do it. You talk about a lesson. And years later, he'd be like the mini boss on a carrier, and I'd already transitioned to Hornets, and I run across him again in a fleet aviation capacity. And I said, man, I can't thank you enough for hiding that damn letter, because they would have made a big deal about it,
Oh, yeah, they would have.
Oh, yeah.
By then, for sure.
Yeah.
So Skipper, tell me about, I'm really curious about the kind of, because we looked at your resume from your retirement flyer, and you looked like you were tracking you were doing the hardcore career track. I mean, you were a flag aide, right?
Yes.
And a detailer?
Yes.
Yeah, and a squadron CO. So you were tracking pretty hardcore there. I mean, that's kind of what I thought I was going to be able to do. I don't know if I would have ever been a flag aide, but that was too much. But I wanted to be on a fly-in tour, probably. But tell me just a little bit about, so when you get to be squadron CO, I have two questions. So the first question is how good is it to be the CO of a commanding officer of a naval aviation squadron, number one? And after you got done with that tour, did you think about trying to make, 06 and even 07 possibly? Was that on your track, or at least as a possible goal?
Let me answer the first part. There's no better job than being a skipper of a fleet squadron, working with guys like Brian, yourself. That's just a dream come true. I know that there are a lot of folks that we're just as talented or more talented than me, and I got lucky. I had people that sort of like what Brian was talking about, that looked out for me, mentored me, and helped pull me along. I never felt I was better than anyone else, but I had opportunities. Did I work hard? Yeah, you
Sure.
bet I did. And it was definitely a great being a chance to pay back, because my skippers had always been my idols and helped me every step of the way, and being in that position to help others.
That's cool.
Phenomenal. It's not about you, and I think that's where a lot of people fall down. It's about everybody else, and that's what was rewarding. And I don't mean that in a trite way. I mean that sincerely.
Yeah, you're the senior naval aviator among a group of, could be 100, 200 people, and they're all looking at you for experience. And I just remember being in the aircraft with my commanding officer for the first time, because, when you first get there, you do the first flight with the skipper, and I'm in there with the skipper, and I'll never forget that as long as I live. And then my last flight I had with the CO was a guy named Chuck Deichman. We called him Chuck D, kind of, behind his back, but in a fond way. And he used to smoke in the aircraft, because he was a chain-smoking Marlboro Light guy. And it was one thing, you could go down to the gear duct and bum a smoke off him. He was awesome. And when he flew, every once in a while, you'd see a butt fly out the windows. It was really funny. Or if you were doing night vert reps, if you were just in the right position, you'd see a butt go out the window, because it was so dark you couldn't miss it. So that's cool. Yeah, all right, good. Every person who I have known who has been a commanding officer, I've always asked them that question, even in casual conversation.
Yeah. But Hugh, it was never my goal to be a CO. In fact, I was getting out after my first tour. That's why I went home. We bought a house back in Westerville, Ohio, and I was getting out. I went, recruiting just to get back there. My CO at the time, and Brian may appreciate this, had already got me set up. I was NFO training in the squadron, and he'd already got me set up to go to VP 30. And I respected him. I know it sounds nuts, but I respected him so much that I couldn't tell him that I didn't want to go.
Exactly right.
I couldn't do it, and I actually waited until he left and the new skipper fleeted up, and I said, "Hey, can you get me out of this? I want to, I'm gonna get out. Give this to somebody else, and let me go back. Let me go back home. I'm getting out of the Navy." And I only spent 2 years there because, we got back. My wife Kathleen was pregnant with our first son Ben, and all of a sudden, even though again the flying was great, not the platform I probably wanted to end up in, but I started missing the people and the excitement and the deployments. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what am I going to do back here? I was going to school, get my JD MBA degree, and I was like, do I want to be a lawyer here in town? Do I really want to do that? And Kathleen was a trooper, and hey, I want back in the ball game. And that's where, being lucky enough to be recruiter of the year helped me because, and I hate details too. The detailer called me. When I called him and, hey, I want to leave recruiting and, go ahead and go on to my sea tour. And he offered me a bunch. Nobody welcome to the competitive jobs because I was savvy. I know how it works. You got to go from one good job to the next. It's just the way it works in naval aviation.
Yep.
And he basically just like, hey, you're basically a nobody lieutenant coming out of a recruiting district where, we send our lowlifes and have a nice day. So I'm kind of like Brian. I listened to your last being a networker and kind of brash. I called up the 2-star Naval Recruiting Command directly and say, hey, I'm your number one recruiter in the nation, and this is what the detailer just told me. I get a call back an hour later from the detail apologizing to me and offering me a flat pay job.
Nice. There you go.
That's how that.
Yeah, that's right. Just one last note when you were talking about people influencing you. I remember that my XO, Pete Cornell, approached me before I left on my last deployment, and I was gonna transfer when I got back, and he goes, "You're gonna go to PG school." I go, "No, I barely graduated college, XO. You're crazy." He goes, "No." He goes, "You're not an idiot anymore." He goes, "We like you, and we need to send some aviators up to Navy post grad, so you're going." He goes, "Plus you did that computer shit for us." So I was like, all right, and it changed my life. So yeah, I totally get that. I'm so grateful that he made me or gave me that direction. Yeah.
I've always wanted to ask Skipper, you knocked the leather off it as a recruiter. What do you think you did different from everybody else, or was it just a great situation? I mean, obviously, were you out beating the bricks, drumming it up, and
you know what? I mean, that's a great question. I was very unconventional. I was working with this senior chief, and we just bonded, and we came up with this stick. I wore my flight suit in, so our CO was pretty good about letting me do what I wanted, and I just wore my flight suit when people come in. We were in a little satellite office right near the Ohio State University. So folks would come in. We were right next to Buffalo Wild Wings, and folks would come in. I'd have my boots up on the desk, and I wouldn't say anything. And he's like, a guy would be like looking around, and I'd let him speak first. And I'm like, I'm not going to recruit you I'm here. If you want a job, I'm the most shit hot guy that'll help you get in naval aviation. Good. And that's how we did it. I never came across, I said, if you want this, and I can tell you about the program, but I am not recruiting you into the Navy. That's not what I do. I said, I'm a fleet aviator. There's no such thing as a recruiter. So that was my hook.
That's good.
And,
I like that.
The other thing we did, my secretary hated this, but I knew that college students didn't want to fill out that damn application and all that stuff. We did it for them. And the conversion rate was huge. Some people say, why are you doing that for these guys? They're supposed to show motivation, all this other stuff. it worked. And
Cool.
so kind of unconventional. And then when you start building a group and they trust you and you go out, I partied with these guys, it just took off because they trusted you. They knew that you wouldn't I tell some guys, hey, you wouldn't enjoy this, you know, and some people I would turn away. They keep showing up, you know, and really wanting in. It was just phenomenal, the dynamics of it. But I think just, you know, being a regular Joe, being honest with folks and explaining that, you know, there is no such thing as a recruiter. You're a guy from a fleet that's just a job I'm in. I'm back in my hometown, I would tell people, loving life and being with the folks. And that seemed to resonate.
You know, Hugh and I are kind of in sales, roughly.
I am in sales.
What you did there, whether you knew it or not, you created scarcity, right? So every other recruiter's like trying to drag you in the door, and you're like, I don't know if you're the right guy for this. And that makes them want it more.
Or at least be inquisitive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that in the sales business, for sure.
Yeah.
So Brian was mentioning to me that your dad was an Air Force guy, and you mentioned that, sorry, and flew Century jets, Century series. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Did you get to see him actually fly much at all when you were a kid, or do you recall? Because that's a little while ago. You probably were pretty young.
Yeah, I was young at the time, but you know, back then I saw all his corporate, you know, models, which, you know, looking at a F-100, F-86, and he grew up in Kentucky, so he kind of had a long, strange trip. He wanted to get off the farm, tobacco farm, and he enlisted at 17, and he ended up in this bootstrap program, sort of like our seaman to admiral type program, and that's how he got into flying, just, you know, because he didn't want to be enlisted anymore.
Right.
That's and cool. That's how it worked, and was at Lackland, and that's where it all started for him.
So do you think that because Brian and I were talking about this on, I think even on the first podcast we mentioned it, that, you know, folks, some guys who are fighter guys, or any pilot, any naval aviator or Air Force aviator, even Army, you know, some guys just love flying, and some guys just love flying in the service. And did you get the impression that your dad was kind of the latter? He'd like flying in the service, but then when it was done, and he wanted to do something else. Yeah,
he was that kind of guy when, you know, when he was finished. He didn't want to be back in the cockpit at all.
Okay, but, that's fair. Yeah, it's just interesting. I just am curious. I've always been curious about that because it takes so much effort to get through an aviation program, even becoming a civilian pilot, right? It's no trick or treat. You got to put in time and effort, and military flying is even harder, just because of we're talking about all the military initiations you have to go through, right? You know, there's flight in-dock or OCS, and then primary flight, and the hazing from your on-wing, and then, you know, the whole bit, and then SEER school, and then crossing the line ceremony and all that. It's just harder, but I just love flying. I still do. And so I can't get enough of it. And, it sounded like you had your private pilot's license when you were younger. Have you pursued flying at all currently?
No, I never got my private pilot.
Oh, okay.
License. I was going to pursue it, but, you know, I just got to fly so much with, Ray Riley,
sure.
You know, we went out and had fun together. So now I had thought about it, but I was off doing a lot of stupid stuff too. So
that's fair. Now, what was your last tour before you retired as an 06?
So after my major command tour, I went to National War College to teach. So I ended up as a number 2 guy so I'm competing against all the other wing commanders. So it's different. Our FRS is a major command. So I had the P8 fleet introduction team, and I think that's why they wanted me to go to 30.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the weapons school, so it's a little bit different. So you got the largest squadron in naval aviation. You own the weapons school, and you own the P8 fleet introduction.
And where is that? So, where was that squadron?
It's all in Jacksonville, Florida.
And have they converted all over to the P8 now? Are all the P3s pretty much gone?
It's just about there. FOC was going to be 2019, so they've just about converted everything over to the 737. And that's what I worked on at the Pentagon, was keeping that program sold, how we were going to do it, and got to do that at VP30. Spent a lot of my time doing that. Plus, they brought in, we were winging new aviators, so then I had my own little training command. Instead of sending P3 folks out to what was in Mather or San Antonio, they sent them direct to VP30. So we were doing the undergraduate maritime winging program.
Oh, so no kidding! Oh, wow! So it wasn't just the RAG; it was flight training to winging.
Yeah.
Wow,
so
that makes sense though.
So sort of several enterprises, underneath the VP30 umbrella, but I didn't like the experience. It wasn't, coming out of 45. Yeah, I was the number one guy, and I don't say that to pat myself on the back, but I did not want to go on to a flag level job. I just wanted to go and enjoy my career, and I got tapped on the shoulder to go be the requirements officer. Flag and said, "Hey, you're going here." In fact, they pulled me out a month early, which kind of torqued me off, and I didn't want that. I didn't want to do that at all. It was extremely hard job.
Sure.
I just it was Memorial Day weekend, and one night I'm with Admiral Bruce Klingon. I don't know if you guys knew him. He was a fighter guy, too, naval aviator, 2-star. He was my boss at the time, and we were preparing a brief for the CNO, and my son playing in a Memorial Day baseball tournament. And I'm up at I think it was that Friday that it was. In fact, Brian, it was. He was a JO in VP30 with me, but CNO, I forget his name, but his son's a P3 guy. For some reason, it's escaping me right now. But anyways, he asked for a brief, on a holiday weekend that next day. So we're preparing the whole time. It's 3:00 in the morning, and so Bruce Klingon, great dude, but he's a nuke. Okay, so he was a carrier nuke kind of guy, and he's pointing up at the PowerPoint slide. He's like, "Can you make this line coincident with this?" And I'm like, "What the?" I lost. I'm like, "What the fuck do you mean touch it?" I'm sorry.
It's all right. We're allowed.
What the heck do you mean? You mean like touching? And you could see that I was about ready to snap. But he was so detailed oriented, this guy. But he was a great human being, and he really took care of me.
That's why he was a nuke. He sort of made me in naval aviation. They're N88. They keep changing the name of it, but he kind of took me and made the PA transition and model program. So I sort of ended up being his boy. And but to give you the Bryce Lund story real quick, Hugh and Brian, so I'm at my desk at VP30, and I get a call from his Flag 8. Now he's UCOM, so he's a 4-star, and he comes on the line. He's like, "Rich, take off your MSI." I was proc to 06, right? Because you had to be a captain to have that job. And he's like, "Take off your MSM and go buy a Legion of Merit." I'm like, "Sir, what are you talking about?" He goes, "You know what? After all that hard work you did, I felt that, I made a mistake and you deserved a LOM." And it's not the medal for me. It was just, if he had just called me and pat me on the back, I'd been good for like 3 more years, Exactly.
But,
it's so true.
But what a quality. So another guy that just helped me immensely in my career.
Well, listen, that's a good almost 50 minutes there. And we went way over on the last one. So I'm trying to keep the game tight, right under an hour. So we can add some, might be able to add some stuff on this. But Skipper Fite, we are very grateful for you to come on the show with us. We're going to try to do 1 or 2 of these a week if I can find a list. Got to get that list longer. Now, just one last thing. So where are you residing? And we didn't even ask about your family at all. And you don't even, if you don't feel comfortable talking about it, that's fine. But sometimes, people like to keep that stuff private. But where are you now? What did you do post-career?
We're in Northern Virginia. So here in Clifton. And my wife works, she's a controller for a wealth management company. And I'm a DOD slimy contractor now, actually working with the Air Force as a lead for this program. It's a wounded, she's wounded. It's basically OSD's wounded care program.
Gotcha.
That Congress mandated, and that's who I work for. And it's great working for the Air Force, believe it or not. They've got nice buildings and golf courses and all that kind of stuff. So,
well, you live about 10 minutes from me, because I live right at the intersection of Prince William Parkway and Liberia, right up off of Old Yates Ford Road.
Yeah, awesome. So we're near each other.
Yeah, we'll have to get lunch soon or whatever. Yeah, for sure.
No, that sounds great. The one of the guys I worked with as a detailer, he was a skipper at the time when this was Navy Annex, where Buckwalter was not military.
I remember the Navy Annex for sure. Yeah.
And his name was back Skipper Anderson. Brian, you might know him, right?
Yeah.
And he said, stay in the Navy as long as you can. And I never really thought, much of that. And it really did work out for me. And I think I learned that lesson when I went to recruiting, how much I miss the people and the passion for what we do. And both my sons are in the Navy now.
Nice.
So it's a great life out here, as I'm sure you guys
absolutely
know.
All right, Skipper. Well, thank you so much for jumping on with us, Brian. It's good to see you, even though you're on travel. And I'm going to try to get something behind on this green screen here so I don't look like a mental patient. And we got episode 3 under wraps. So, all right, gentlemen, you have a wonderful day. And Skipper, I'll probably reach out to you soon if I can get some time here. All righty.
Absolutely. I'd love that. And thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Y'all have a great day now. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.